My name is Joshua, and I am the Tribune. It's really important that we talk about Christian cliches and church robotics. It's actually plaguing the body of Christ. Now, these people I'm going to be talking about have fed me personally. But the problem is, we're going into a new era, and God is not happy with these routines. Jesus Christ could never be predicted. Nobody could say, oh, Jesus was going to do this or Jesus was going to do that. Everything he did was the exact same all the time. He falls into these patterns. He caters to the people. You didn't see Jesus doing things like that. God didn't do that in the Old Testament. He was always unpredictable, and he's still like that today. But the problem is we can't appreciate that as Christians because our leaders are leading us into patterns that foster blurry vision and closed ears when God's trying to invent new things with his people. When I can watch a pastor who's talking to the body of Christ, and I know every time he's going to start dancing, I know when I can already predict when the organ's going to start coming in, it's the exact same time. I know how it's going to come in. I know exactly how it's going to sound. The worship leaders are doing the exact same hand motions every time, all over the world in the body of Christ. They do the exact same steps with their feet. This culture is destroying our creativity with God. It even goes as further. It even goes into how the leaders expect the congregation to respond to them. We've fallen into patterns of saying certain things to the congregation and expecting they're going to say something back to you. And they have to say exactly what you think they're going to say. And they know that. So they become parrots. They shout exactly when they're supposed to shout. Every time like clockwork. You can actually sense when everybody's going to shout. Our praise breaks are totally routine. And people know, oh, he pressed that button. That means that we're supposed to just shout and jump and dance for about 5.5 minutes. Then he'll move on to the next point. No. This is not good. God is not pleased with this. The next thing that I see is that these leaders who are supposed to be God's leaders are delivering difficult words to the people, being obedient, and then getting very frustrated when they don't clap because of these things. So then they make everybody start clapping, and everybody feels obligated to clap. When really they're trying to marinate, you just hit them with a word that they're trying to actually think about and process, and God is actually going into their hearts. But you need affirmation from them because a lot of our leaders are insecure. They're not secure in what they're saying, no matter if somebody doesn't like it or not, or it doesn't matter what they think about it. And so now we're doing like this. Listen, they're saying things like, you need to rebuke this and stop listening to filthy music and craving Satan's entertainment. And then now everybody's clapping. When most of those people are the people who crave Satan's entertainment. And they're clapping because they expect that they're supposed to get excited. And, ah! No. When God comes and tells us things that are very difficult that we need to correct, none of us are just shouting and dancing and laughing and happy. That's not really how it goes. And everybody knows that. So why are we doing this in church? Why do we expect this of the people? Why do we turn hard things that God needs us to say to actually start building people? Why do we turn these things into jokes? We turn these things into jokes to soften it. And we're actually giving the people half-baked bread and things that are totally watered down. And the people know that when you deliver this word, it's gonna be hard, but he'll have a joke for me at the end. Then what happens is all these patterns, they go back to God with these patterns because they are looking at us as leaders and saying, if they're doing this, this must be how God is. So when I go home, when I'm alone, I can't hear from God unless I have a praise break every time. And I'm going to start dancing and shouting, and I'm going to go in this routine. I'm going to stomp and stuff. Every time, nobody's doing that. And if they try, God will let it burn out. Because He's not concerned about all that stuff. He's concerned about us hearing His voice and being totally obedient to Him, carrying out His mission, and moving forward in His plans, and erecting His purpose. That's what He's concerned about. And I actually argue that the leaders who fall into these patterns and expect their congregation to be parrots, they don't do that in their private time. And if they do, that's very scary. God doesn't come to you and say, well, everybody say, believe in God. And you expect them to say that all in unison because they're parrots. What are we doing? God doesn't do that to us. Joshua, repeat after me. Let's fix pride. And then everybody's like, let's fix pride. What? That's not, what are we doing? What does that even, that doesn't make any sense what we're doing. And for people who want to say that your heritage passed this on to you, I ask, what heritage are you going off of? What are you following? For black leaders who are Christians, who are God's chosen to lead the congregations and lead His children and feed them, why are we going off of African heritage to deliver His word? Because we're dancing in the villages and that way back in our ancestry, we're just dancing away and why are we doing? So they're doing that because they want to do that for entertainment, but because we look back at our heritage and say, well, that's how we are. God's like, no, that's not how I am. I'm not repetitive like that. And that can go in any heritage. What we need to do is we need to look at our spiritual heritage. We need to look at the prophets and what are they like in the Bible. They weren't routine. They didn't do anything routine because they're listening to God, and God does new things. So we get these routines and these patterns, and we come to church and be robots. And then we try to go to God like a robot, and we can't hear Him because, well, we're just being super robotic, and we turn and just start walking that direction. We'll walk for 25,000 miles in the wrong direction. He's still back here saying, where'd you learn that? I learned that at church. You learned that at church? Oh, well, that's not me. This is how God's thinking. In order to build the things we need to build in this coming era that confound the world, make Satan's children bow down in all industries, we should be leading. In order to do that, we need to think way beyond our routines. We need our leaders to actually take these routines, take this every time the organ comes in, and we know about it, we can predict it every time, we're comfortable with it. No, we shouldn't be in that routine. Those things all need to be put on the altar and burned up in this coming era, and they will be. Because God is looking for new things. And in order to have new things, we cannot be in these patterns that don't matter anymore. This brings me to another point. Why in the world do we feel like we have to announce everybody in the room who we think has a title? This is so unbelievable that it's embarrassing. If you have somebody in the room who comes to your church, if the congregation doesn't know that they're there, then they shouldn't know they're there. Let's just say this right out of the gate. Why do we do this? Maybe it's because we feel obligated because they did something for the church. Or they are prominent and we think we need them. And we want to make them feel good. Anybody who desires that, their name to be called on a list, the doctor so-and-so's here, and you actually have to pull out a list. Can you imagine? Let's talk about Satan's children. I think it would be very, very embarrassing, and you'd never see this. If there's a big event of the world, and then the speaker comes up, takes out a list, and starts listing the most popular people. And say, they're here. Oh my gosh, this singer's here, this actor's here, I want to announce this. That would be so embarrassing, and it's actually an insult to that person because they're thinking, why do you need a list? You need to read from a card to say that I'm in the room? No. That would make me very angry if I came in a room and someone had to pull a card out and say that I'm in the room. Because that means God doesn't want people to know I'm in the room yet. So those people are not the people God's even looking at. God's looking at the people way in the back of the auditorium, who they're not even noticed. They are totally stepped over. They're totally just completely anonymous. Those are the people that, if we don't start burning these routines and getting rid of them, he will start reassigning things because he needs certain things done. He will either reassign them within the church to people who aren't boxed in their mind with these routines and carry these into their relationship with him, or he will go raise up Satan's children. He will find Satan's children and he will be ministering to them, pulling them into the kingdom, raising them up without boxes, because they're not tainted by these routines. They're innovative. And they're on the lowest rung of innovation because they don't work with God. But he'll use that because they're not boxed in. And he'll raise them and start replacing everybody. No, I can't do that. I can't be involved in that. I'm not going to be replaced. My assignment is not going to be reassigned because I keep God in a box. That's not going to happen. I'd rather the church people not like me than to get reassigned by God because I want to fit in with the church people and I want them to like me and I want them to accept me and I want to fit in like a little robot. No. And it's sad because the people feel obligated to do it because the people of God, the leaders of God, they're in authority. So if they tell me to say something, I feel like I have to repeat after them just because they're God's leader. No. I don't have to repeat after anybody and be a parrot just because you want me to. Because you want to put me in a box and in a system and fit in your little world. That's not going to happen. We need to stop this. Now, these people who are doing this, these leaders, they have fed me big time. And I very much admire them. But I noticed that I have to, when I'm listening to a message or I'm in church, I have to sift through all this fluff, throw it into the fire, and gather up the meat and eat it. This is a big problem. Not for me, but for the people who can't sift through it like I can. How did I be able to sift through this fluff? Is because I went with God. God had He wanted to have a relationship with me, and I needed to have that by myself so I can see what's being said by God for me and what's not. When is this pastor? Oh, he threw in a joke when this is actually a serious moment. He actually joked about a serious thing that God's talking about. No, I gotta throw that in the fire because this is not joking time. This is the era we're in. It's really important. These are things that God is very angry about because it's stifling his people for the assignments that he's now trying to deal out. He has commissions that cannot be completed or even prepared for with these routines in their mind. This has really affected Christian entertainment big time. This is why we are such in a pattern. People know a Christian movie, oh, it's going to be about this. They're going to have a new spin on the crucifixion. They're going to have a new spin on Jesus' disciples. This TV show is going to talk about this. Oh, it's going to be a new spin about envy or about some kind of forgiveness. It's just going to be a new spin. The scripts are totally cliche. Totally cliche. And now that makes Christians crave Satan's entertainment because I'm not going to sit and watch a movie that I can predict all the cliches. I'd rather not have entertainment. I'd rather entertain myself. This is why I started going to God and he started creating different things and talking to me about this because I noticed that he was telling me not to get involved in Satan's entertainment. But also when I tried to go to the church, it was so mundane and so cliche and so robotic that he told me that stuff is foolish. There's great things, okay? There's great television shows about Christ. There's great movies. But a lot of it is cliche pattern. And he doesn't like it. And he's not interested in it. And he said, I don't like that stuff. I don't want you to look at that. How many times can I watch things like that? I'm not growing. I'm not being fed. I'm not enjoying it. This is filthy. This is cliche. What do? I go to the Creator himself. This is what happens. And this is what other people need to do. But things don't have to be like this. They really don't. God is awesome. He will work in rhythms. His character doesn't change, but his methods do change. In order to know that, we have to make sure that we are not training ourselves to be fit in these foolish patterns. We need to stop treating the congregations and God's people like parrots and puppets and robots. This is the word. Anybody who doesn't come into align with this word will be reassigned and removed. Christians who have salvation, they'll go to heaven. Wonderful. But in this season of building, their positions will be cast over here. And God will put people in their place who will do these things and innovate with him because souls are on the line. We need to gather Satan's children, bring them in, and raise them up as powerful believers. And then keep doing that. Keep doing it over and over again. That comes through not falling into patterns. Church patterns are destroying the body of Christ. I love you all. Hail Jehovah.